I am sitting here on, so talk about being nice. First of all, there's the light side of being nice, right? And I've got some really nice friends. And right now I am sitting on a pad that is filled with amethyst crystals. It's called a biomat. And a friend of mine is letting me borrow it while I've been integrating some new energy and vibrations, and it feels amazing on my back right now. I was going to meditate, and then so I've been meditating on it, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to do a live sitting on it and see what transmits. Yeah, I was thinking about what story can I share, because I teach because I've lived through this stuff and learned from it. And there's this thing in my brain that just this natural gift to take something and create like a Cliff Notes fast transformation shift, healing from it. And so that's what today I'm going to talk about: the shadow of being nice and why it's a really good time to start giving that up, especially for the sensitive leaders and entrepreneurs, especially for the healers and the empaths. A lot is changing right now with the way that empaths and sensitives have been showing up and the energy, and it's really imperative that you take what's happening and create the shift, because not only will it have a personal impact on yourself and the life that you're co-creating in your own energetic vibration, because if you're watching this, you understand that what we create, it comes from our own energetic vibration, right? So what we put out, we attract. What we are aligned with, vibrating at, is going to manifest in our experience. And so the way empaths have been for the very long time, and the sensitives and the healers, is that there's almost been this subliminal agreement or contract to take on other people's stuff. People ask me often, how do you not take it on? And it's like, well, it's a skill that's learned, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about today about why some people don't turn it off. There's a shadow side to that too, and fears about like, who are they, or what will happen when they start stopping the sort of like a codependence of taking on other people's stuff. So let me get back on track. Say hi to who's here. Paul says, if you're not willing to go to dark places, you won't be successful. Absolutely, right? Because we are everything. We are the dark and the light inside of us. So we are a beautiful masculine, feminine balance within. And so it's like, what are we allowing to drive our bus, though, right? And that's actually, that's, Paul, you said a great thing, because actually the shadow side of being too nice is actually coming from a wounded space. That's the way that the transmission was coming through to share with you today, is that if you're being too nice and it's having an impact on you and it's not coming from the genuine heart space, the shadow of it is coming from the wound space. And so in some kind of way, you're trying to meet your own wound by being too nice. And what happens when we're too nice, when I say stuff like that, it's like, when resentment starts to build up, when you're being taken advantage of, or when you're allowing yourself to be taken advantage of, when boundaries are being crossed, when other people's needs are being met, but yours aren't. So that's what I'm talking about being too nice. And the shadow side of that is that when you're actually doing all of these things to meet an inner wound, to have an inner wound met, and the challenge with that is that then all of your energy continues to go to the wound, to the wound, to the wound, versus allowing the wound to heal, shifting the relationship you're having with other people, and actually stepping into an empowered space. Now, what happens is when the sensitives and the empaths and are in this role of taking on other people's energies, or processing other people's stuff, or afraid to do the hard thing because they can sense and feel what another person's response is going to be, then that's when so I get distracted with the comments. I gotta, when I'm streaming, I get distracted. So what happens is sometimes people who are taking on other people's stuff are afraid to stop taking on other people's stuff because they're afraid they'll be abandoned, they won't be liked anymore. But here's the thing, the same thing when you're trying to fulfill your own wound, the energy is going in the wrong direction. Does that make sense? I'm gonna pause and say hi. Matt says, boy, about perfect timing. Excellent. Hey, Karina, thanks for showing up. Alexa, glad to see you here. Hey, David. Hey, Janet. Okay, good. I'm glad. Yeah, the timing. This is, you know, I'll tell you, if anybody who was ever getting nervous about doing a live, I mean, there was part of me that just didn't want to do it. And it's really about getting out of the way and just allowing the energetic transmission to come through, because I know there's a lot of people that need to hear this information because so much is happening on a grander level. So back to the example of what's happening is the empaths are needing to, so when I say empaths and sensitives and healers and you know, leaders of consciousness, what I've seen, right, so much has been this way of being about taking on other people's stuff. It's almost like it's been this, like I said earlier, about a subliminal contract or a subconscious agreement. And those are all breaking right now. And what happens is that what stirs up, right? So life is actually, you're being guided to stop these behaviors and stop these interactions with others and quit the codependence and really just create separation. But what happens on a human and an ego level is that we start to be afraid that, you know, we lose like the sense of who we are, how we belong, or now we're actually going to feel what the other person feels when they're having their own feelings. Because that's a lot of the times what happens is the sensitives and empaths is they take on other people's feelings because it's easier for you to process the feeling than it is to be present to another person feeling their feelings. Does that make sense? Is this hitting on somewhere? Hey, Steph. Is this like landing for you guys? Now, what's really important is what I was going back to earlier, is that the shadow of that is that there's a part of you that may have a wound that's trying to be fulfilled within this dynamic. And if you don't heal the wound, you're going to continue to stay in that pattern, and it's going to prevent you from really being able to be in your power to co-create the experiences you want to be experiencing. Now, what was that? What else was I going to say about okay, so now the other side of that is that when you separate from the other person and allow them to have their experience, that's actually what you're supposed to, you're supposed to, that's what's meant to be happening right now. Because when you pull away, it actually allows the space for the other person to be in their own power, to make a choice from themselves. I heard over the weekend, someone said, don't save someone too quickly before they even know they're in any kind of danger. Now, nobody needs to be saved. Let's not get all crazy about the semantics of the language, but you know what I'm saying as an empath. When you're taking over someone's feelings, you're actually preventing them from being in their own power. And that's what's happening on a collective right now, is that, you know, the empaths or sensitives are remembering who they really are and how much more powerful they are to co-create. Because again, if your energy and your stream of consciousness is going towards a wound, going towards any kind of codependence, taking over responsibility for other people, you're lowering your own vibration. And what's really underneath that too, not only the wound, and I've been writing about this a bit on my posts about desire, there's a fear of you not allowing your own desire. Okay, so take that in, may or may not resonate with all of you. That's one of the patterns I'm seeing. And underneath the desire, sometimes what we do is we put our focus on other people. It keeps us from looking at our own desires because we're actually afraid of what we might feel if we don't have that desire fulfilled. Are you guys seeing the theme here? It's so much about feelings, okay? And the other important piece is that this energy that we're expanding into, it actually is, it's a visceral, strong feeling inside your body. So as we are expanding more, the way that I describe it too is the integration of the soul into the body, the integration within. And so what happens is that's a very strong energetic vibration. And what it does is it needs space. So anything that's in the way of, keeping your vibration small, distracting you from your purpose, keeping you wrapped up in any kind of chaos or repeating patterns or cycles that you're meant to break free from, that's all going to be coming to the surface. You're going to feel it physically. You're going to see it in your manifestation. And this is where you have to be making the decisions that are sometimes really hard. I'll share a quick story. This has happened years ago, but I was in a friendship with a friend, and I was stuck in my own story loop. And at one point, she was just like, I can't talk to you anymore. And she cut off the friendship. She needed space, and that was. So not only did she, being the sensitive one herself, she had to do the hard thing, knowing that it would stir up feelings within me, but she was grounded in herself enough to know that that was the thing that needed to happen. For herself, because she didn't want her vibration being affected by our interaction. But also what happened for me is it's had me take a really good hard look at where was I focusing? Where was I putting my energy and attention? And so what I'm seeing now is that some of the people that are in this space are making the hard decisions and leaving the romantic relationships, ending the marriages. So as hard as they, like a sensitive knows that, like, ending this relationship, it's going to cause chaos, it's going to cause, pain, but that doesn't mean that you, one, need to take it on, or two, stay in it so that the other person doesn't feel the pain. The same thing with relationship with clients who are not soulmate clients. The thing with the sensitive leaders right now is you're being called forth to be standing in your truth and in your power. And sometimes the truth isn't always nice. Okay? Sometimes, you have to say the hard thing in order for it to be the right thing. Does that make sense? Let me see what you guys are saying here. Alexa says, perfect timing, feeling weird. When other people feel uncomfortable, she feels guilt. Thank you for saying that. So that's the other thing that's happening right now, right? And that's, the things that we're going to be talking inside this way of the empowered empath is that shame comes up, guilt comes up, right? And what's happening is that as you're like creating the separation, there is a guilt because you've been doing it for so long, right? Or you feel guilty that they feel bad, or there's this over responsibility thing that's happening that you have to pull away and actually become over responsible for yourself in a sense and allow them to be in their own power. Matt says, bullseye, fantastic. Such a profound lesson. Yes, distractions. That's the biggest thing, is that what happens is sometimes is our ego pulls in distractions, pulls in people, pulls in experiences to actually distract us from moving forward. But here's the thing, if you're wanting to be more successful in your business, let's say you want to be showing up more online, or you want to be speaking up more, or making more money in some way, there's this level of focus that needs to happen, that you can become acutely aware of when other parts of you start to pull in the distractions and the chaos. And it's going to be hard sometimes. I mean, I grew up an empath. I grew up sensitive. The whole journey, it is a lot about disappointing other people. Again, their responsibility. Everybody else's feelings are their responsibility. If you take anything away from this live today, is that you cannot be responsible for other people's feelings. It's always, always, always a choice. And when you start to realize how much your feelings are a choice, you'll start to be more comfortable and aware of creating the separation and allowing other people to have their feelings and their emotions. As you're creating your separation, right? As you're pulling away, as you're detaching, right? And allowing others to have their feelings, not processing, not taking it on, not trying to make it softer, not trying to make it easier. I get it. I get that you feel what the other person feels. That's the gift of being a sensitive. That's the gift of being, a healer and an empath. But you're not meant to be taking it on anymore. You feel it enough to have information, but you have to unhook from it. And I understand that in the personality, the ego, the human experience, you're afraid to be abandoned. You're afraid you're not going to be liked. You're afraid you're going to be ousted. And I will tell you that relationships do change. And, if you're meant to be a leader in this world of consciousness, you're going to have to get vulnerable. You're going to be around people who aren't going to like what you say. If you're meant to be a coach, you have to have that very strong knowing, because when you're working with people who are starting to spin out in their own ego death, wanting to hold on to their pain, wanting to hold on to their story, you've got to be the one that is not taking it on and holding that very strong grounding rod so they can spin off, and the belief and the story and the pattern can just like transmute off, and then they can lock in to where you are in this groundingness and this knowingness of this empowerment. Now, what happens is that when you start to detach, you get more of your energy back, your vibration rises. And now what happens is now you're not hooked into your wound anymore. So, we're assuming that you've done the healing work around your wound as well. It is a lot about intention. And now your vibration is raised. You're bumping into people, synchronicity is happening, you're living in flow, things are happening with effortlessness and ease. It's because it's like you just like unhook, you unplug. Remember the old movies with the telephone operators, and they were like plugging things into a board? You're pulling back all of your energy, and now your circuit board is full, so that you can be in the space of attracting the relationship that you want, the money that you want, when you have everything unplugged from others, you're confident, you're tuned into your higher self, so that you're hearing the direct messages, not all of the static for so many other people that you're plugged into. Yes, the ending the relationships, that's a big thing that I'm seeing right now. And it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of bravery, because I get it, you're going to feel what the other person is going to feel. But again, I've even seen direct experiences where in the separation, it has actually been a catalyst for the healing of the partner. So you taking on other people's stuff is actually a hindrance to the other people who need to be in their own process, on their own path, on their own journey. And then what you get to do is be the leader. You get to show others how it's done, how ending a relationship, you can have the pain that you can have, but it's not going to, keep you from, really continuing to move forward with what you want. I see some stories around, so the client thing I've seen. Oh, here's the other thing. If you're a sensitive leader and you're trying to run an online business, and when you are not asking for the price that you've received in order to share the value of your work and have that exchange happen, and if you're people are coming to you with stories about they don't have enough money and they can't afford it, and then you're starting to bend your own rules in order to help another, that's doing a couple of things. One, it's sending this really mixed message to your higher self, because your higher self is like, hey, charge this price, and then you're like, never mind, I'm going to make up my own thing. And then that causes a little bit of static out into, so then you're then attracting more people who don't want to pay what the value is. And then you're not giving, again, the other person the opportunity to step up for themselves, to choose for themselves, to do what it is that they need to do for themselves in order to push themselves over their own comfort zone. I feel like I said themselves 17 times in that last sentence. Total relevance. Karina says, okay, so what happens when the relationship is between two empaths and we are both trying to set boundaries? It feels hurtful and scary to both, very confusing at times. Oh yeah. Yes. Okay, so here's what I say for you, Karina, is to take a look at the wounds. Where are you? Who's doing laughy faces? Where are the two of the empaths hooked into the wounds? Yeah. So remember what I said. This is how I started off the call. Is the shadow of the being too nice is having your wound need met through doing something that's not in alignment with being in your power. Let me know if that resonates. Yeah, because it's like the wounding piece. So you're setting boundaries, but there's something with the wounds. Tell me if that resonates for you and if that makes sense, because I can see some of this stuff and it's just an energetic transmission. And so if you think about it, if the two of you are trying to have your wound need met, or in setting the boundaries, it's going to trigger more of a wound, I would have you, and this is for everybody, take a look at, and this is the other piece of this whole transmission, is that what do you really want? What is your greatest desire? Because that's another thing with the empath, is that so when an empath can feel what others feel, right? When they have their own desire, right? And sometimes it's really freaking bold to have a desire, to have, you know, a want greater than those around you, right? There's almost a fear that if I were to get what I wanted, others may feel bad about themselves, or others may not like me because now I have something that they haven't yet to achieve. It's a tricky thing with the sensitives, and this is why I'm doing this program, is the way of the empowered empath, is because as we're moving through, we really have to learn how to build those strong muscles to maintain your empathy, to maintain your sensitivity, because it is a gift. But the shift is happening so that you're going to be more of a trigger. Honest truth, you're going to be more of a trigger for people, because it's going to be triggering people into their growth, into their ego death, into their own empowerment. And you've got to have the strong muscle for it. And here's the thing, you can't not do this right now. You just can't, because it's happening anyway. And you're only going to continue to stay inside these relationships where you're being hurt. Is that clear? I'm so passionate about this. Matt says, got beat to death in my first marriage because I was too nice, kept my mouth shut, reached a point where you were spent mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Yes, this is a chat we had. I remember that. And it still took a couple of years before I finally left. Yeah, I know. It's not an easy decision to make. Here's where it gets hard for an empath. When your own decision, the decision that you make, has a direct impact on another person. Leaving a relationship, having a boundary, right? So saying no, you know, not fulfilling someone else's need, taking care of yourself before, you know, over another person. So anytime you make a decision and it impacts another, that's one of the more challenging times for an empath. And this is where building the muscle is, that you're going to have the confidence to make the decisions. You're going to have confidence to make the choices, and be able to allow the other person to have their feelings but not take them on. Because another thing with the sensitives is that there's a subconscious thing of, it's my fault. How do I fix it? How do I make the other person feel better? And then what you end up doing is you end up throwing your own values out the window, you know, your own needs, your own boundaries, because you're too worried about what's going to happen with the other person. Karina says, my wound is definitely fear of abandonment. And if I'm not perfect, I'll be abandoned. So we'll talk about fear of abandonment, is that, so when we're trying to have these boundaries, right? So then you know what the other person is going to feel. So let's just pretend you have this sense, I'm going to put up a boundary, and the other person is going to feel afraid. And then our brain starts to go into all these things. Well, they're going to feel afraid, or they're going to be angry, and they're going to abandon me. They're not going to want to be my friend anymore. Life is going to be really hard. How am I going to manage all of this stuff, right? So then what happens is that your mind starts to create problems that don't even exist. Does that ring a bell? So the biggest thing to understand in all of this right now is that there is a very real shift that's happening right now, and that we're all coming into our empowerment. Those that are sensitive leaders and empaths and healers, and you're being called to pull back all of your, operator plugs, all of your energy, and allow the people around you to be in their own process without taking it on. The biggest piece here is getting comfortable with how it feels when that is happening. Because what happens is that when you start to feel what the other person is feeling, it's easier to feel it for them than it is to feel what it feels like inside of you. And so what happens is when you have this, start to use this muscle of standing in your power, making decisions, making choices, allowing people to process their own stuff, you're going to feel stronger, and there's going to be less of an energetic impact. So the other piece is, look at the wound. Am I being too nice? Am I keeping boundaries? Am I not asking for the price that I want to ask? Am I not showing up in my business because, I'm afraid of what others might feel or what others might think, or I'll be too vulnerable? Am I staying inside this marriage too long because I'm afraid that how the other person will be hurt, or what they'll feel, or what they'll have to go through, or the impact that my decision is going to have on other people? So if you could start to take a shift about, okay, well, what is the positive impact? Sometimes, you can't keep taking on other people's stuff, and just realize that the gift in you doing you may be exactly what the other person needs in order for them to be empowered to do them, right? Does that make sense? Bingo, why you stayed, exactly. So I hope this helped and supported, and really know that your life experiences are going to be showing you this stuff, and this information transmitted is intended to have a little light bulb go on in the back of your mind. If you want more of a forecast, and if you want to really just kind of knock these things out, the guilt, the shame, the codependence, and the biggest thing really is owning your empowerment, standing in your truth, feeling the expanded energy inside your body when you're feeling so connected to your higher self and to your confidence and to your vulnerability and moving forward. It's really so much more about being comfortable in your strength and being detached about what's happening out here, because as I said earlier, as the more that you're in alignment with yourself and you have your energy, the more your vibration shifts, and then everything starts to match that. So if everything feels a little not aligned right now, it's time to do the inner work. We're going to be doing it inside the way of the Empowered Empath. You're going to have access to me for 5 weeks. And if you've done any of my programs, and I shared before, I've got an outline of what's going to happen, but whoever comes together inside this group, it's going to be, channeled and for this collective group. Because I'm telling you, life is going to be bringing these experiences, and it can get hard, and it can be easy to try to go back to the old patterns and cycles of not wanting to hurt other people. So, more and better is available on the other side of any kind of fear. The fear of feeling what another is going to feel when you standing in your own power is not as scary as your mind or your fear will tell you. Life gets so much easier when you're just remember who you are and do the hard thing and say the hard thing. Yeah, it is. It's easier. It's in flow. It's all of the desires that you want are beyond that energetic protection that is showing up as some kind of wound or fear. Thank you for showing up. And if you guys leave comments on the replay, I will come back. If you have any questions about the Empowered Empath program, you can message me. I'll leave a link here. But in the meantime, thanks to your interaction and your comments and for showing up. And yeah, it's really time for you to be, shining brightly and being your full power self and living in that heart space. That's the other thing about empaths. I could talk about this forever. That's the thing, is because you feel so much that you're doing some of these things to protect your heart, but you're actually protecting yourself from having the fuller experience that you know is possible. You're amazing.